Bring me everyone.
What do you mean everyone?
Everyone!
Yes. I don't get it.
Get away from her, you bitch!
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hello and welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, as I always say, the second least worst of day of the week. We've made it past Monday, almost a hump day, and this is the greatest show for everything. I don't know, whatever you talk about. So, anyways, Victor has some other engagements, and he will not be joining us today, but I do have a very special guest on. One, I think it might be his YouTube debut. I'm not sure. So with that being said, we're going to get my co-host for tonight on, and his name is Rodney. What's up, Rodney?
What up, y'all? How you doing? And you are correct. This is my debut. So I guess maybe this will opening for a spinoff, if you will.
Right. And you and I, we've been following each other on the gram for quite some time.
Yeah.
I think and then I see what you collect, and I see a lot of similarities. I think there might be you might be a bridge between myself and Victor. So if you have fun tonight and you ever want to join Victor and me, more than welcome to. But tonight, our topic it's May, so we're still talking about Star Wars. We're talking about our favorite Star Wars vehicles, maybe ones that were made into toys, maybe ones that weren't. We're going to get to that. But first, I'm gonna do a rundown. Rodney first. Rodney, I want to know a little bit more about you, and I know a little bit more about your collecting habits. But I'm gonna start with some questions. Is that cool?
Cool.
All right.
Firework.
So, well, I want to get to what you collect now, but like when you were a kid, like what was your main bread and butter? What would you say was like you were like die hard? This is what I collect, and then when you started branching out, what were those things when you were younger?
So when I was younger, it was Star Wars. It was, I grew up during those times, and I always remember. I don't remember seeing the original movie in theaters, but I do remember one Christmas, I guess, shortly after that movie came out, my parents, wake up Christmas morning, open gifts, and then we went to my grandparents' house for Christmas dinner. And so I'm thinking, okay, and I'm gosh, maybe 4 or 5. And I remember I was like, oh, I'm gonna go play with my toys that I got. And then my mom was like, well, you got another one. And I was like, another one?
Yeah.
And then my dad comes out with this big old box and open up, and it's the Millennium Falcon.
Nice.
And so, there were Christmases that was like, it was centered around Star Wars. And then, growing up, as I grew up, I always remember too, younger age, I guess fast forward about 7 or 8. And, I was a bit of a military brat. So we moved around a bit. And so I remember one neighborhood we lived in, I had friends where we would, after school, get together at the local playground, and I'd bring all my Star Wars stuff. A kid will bring all his G.I. Joe stuff. Another kid would bring all his He-Man stuff. One Transformers and all this stuff. And we just mishmashing them all together and stuff. And so, Star Wars is a big thing. And then, as I had a few G.I. Joes as a kid. More of the 85 line that's like, guys like Beachhead and General Hawk and Lifeline, stuff like that. And I remember I was in like 3rd grade, and I think that was one that was like, okay, foreshadowing that I'm not the best when it comes to trading.
Yeah.
Because I remember they had just released Serpentor. That was like a mail away, I think, at the time. And he came with a chariot and everything. My parents didn't get it for me, but I knew someone that did. And I wind up trading half of my G.I. Joe lineup to get this Serpentor.
Damn.
And it was crazy because I remember like it was like the last day of school. And so I was going to stay with my grandmother for the summer. So going up to Philadelphia, and I got Serpentor, but I got no one to fight him against.
Like the whole collection just gone.
Yeah, pretty much. And then, you know, it was like, you know, and also I just rewind back that I remember my, you know, hell, I still have a couple of things from my childhood, but, you know, I remember like, you know, I had at one time, I had a Rocky figures from Rocky 3. It was a Rocky and Mr. T figure. And then even, you know, I had the A-Team figures.
Oh, nice.
I still have my Mr. T B.A. Baracus figure.
That's awesome.
Then, you know, I think I have one, maybe two like Transformers. I think the last thing I got into as growing up was maybe like, I think I had like 1 or 2 Ninja Turtles. And by that time I was, you know, starting to get into like sports, girls. It was like, put that stuff to the side and go on. And
was there a hard stop in collecting? It's like, all right, I'm done with that.
So I off and on that I've always said, you know, I've had people get me back into it. That was kind of the Godfather. When I find a way out, you pull me back in. That, you know, when I stopped collecting or stopped, you know, playing with toys and stuff, you know, my brother, you know, there's a 10-year age difference between us. And so my brother, you know, I started kind of like, hey, Star Wars, you know, let's watch Star Wars and we can always talk about it, this and that. And then my parents would buy him some Star Wars things. And then I remember, you know, he's a young age, and like any kid, you're just tossing the stuff around. So you're losing things. And so I would tell him like, hey, you know, make sure you put that thing together, keep it together, because it could be valuable one day and so on. But he was just whatever. And it got me to a point. I was like, you know what? If you're not going to follow this, and I know I made mistakes at, why don't I just get the stuff for myself? And so then that got me back into it for a bit, where I was just like, hey, I'll just buy this stuff for myself and just whatever.
Yeah. And that's, sorry, I was going to say, like, I remember there was a point definitely where I stopped collecting, but not because I wanted to, just because like we were moving around so much. But like Star Wars was kind of like the evolution of playing with toys and then just displaying toys and then just collecting them. And then there was a long gap for me where I just like, I did not buy toys. It just wasn't something. And then finally, when the NECA Turtles came out, I was like, okay, yeah, that's what pulled me back in. I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, because, you know, like I said, it for me, it came in waves that, you know, like when I did that, you know, I was collecting here and there. And then that was at that time when I was jumped back into it. I think that was when they did like the Power of the Force Star Wars figures.
Mm-hmm.
And so that ran me a good period. And then I joined the Army. And that was kind of like, okay, it stops right there. Because I'll never forget my mom, when I got ready to leave for my first duty station, my mom came and she's like, hey, whatever you do, don't get around these guys. You're probably gonna be around some killers and whatnot. So don't go buying the toys and talking the Star Wars and all that stuff. And so I was like, okay, yeah. And I just happened one night just be out and it's like picked up one thing. So, okay. You know, kind of gradually picked up another thing. And then I remember I wrote to my brother. I was like, "Hey, dude, can you send me some of my figures?"
Nice.
And he shot them to me. And then one day, like, I guess my mom caught him, and she was like, "What are you asking to send you?" And I was like, I have to send some of my figures." And she's like, "Oh, geez, are you doing that again?" I was like, "Yeah." She's like, "But I was like, "Well, here's a funny thing for you, Mom." I was like, "I got some stuff set up in my room and whatnot." I was like, "I don't play with them, but guess who does?" She's like, "Who?" "All my buddies."
Yeah.
I was like, all my buddies will come over and they just be like, "Hey, Dent, hey, can I?" "Yeah, go ahead." And they're, "Oh man, I am your father." Oh, I was like, and I just sit there and just watch them go at it. And it's like, okay.
I was gonna say, yeah, because like not a lot of people come over my house, but like especially when they do and they come into the room, like they'll never collect, but they're always like it reminds them of something, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Okay, so you had a gap in collecting, you kind of picked through.
A couple of gaps, but
Today,
yeah.
when we're talking about today, I think you and I, and probably Victor, we collect a lot of the same stuff. So I see a lot of DC, Marvel, GI Joe. Am I right on that? Star
Yeah,
Wars.
yeah. That I say my collection is similar to, I guess, like my musical taste. If you go on my iTunes, you'll see, Phil Collins, DMX, Disney songs, Jay-Z, Kendrick, uh, some Britney, it's a hodgepodge of
Everywhere.
stuff. So
Cool.
yeah, it's like, and I think, one of the things with this, and I think your name says it beautifully, that a lot of stuff is it's based on nostalgia. Um, that
Yeah.
I look at a lot of my stuff, and my wife will tell me all the time, she's like, "You got too much stuff." And I was like, "I guess."
As long as I keep it in this room, I'll never hear that.
And I told her that too, that because we've lived at our house for going on maybe 6 years now, and fairly big house, and so I've got a pretty big size room for this. And I told her, I was like, "Hey, you let me have this room. I'm gonna put my stuff up, but one thing I won't do, I won't have it bleed out into the house."
Yeah,
And
I have this room and I have the garage. I
yeah,
gave my wife has everything else.
yeah, I was like, I'm like, because I told him, like, "Hey, the rest of the house, it has your stamp on it as far as decorating. This is my stamp." I was like,
Right.
"It's, it's my toys." Recently, I'm a huge Chicago Bears fan, and so recently I repaint the room to Chicago Bears colors,
That's cool.
because like the previous homeowners, this room, um, they were Steelers fans, and so they had the room colored in Steelers colors. And so I was like, I toyed between either Chicago Bears colors or Chicago Bulls colors. And so went and painted, the whole room blue, and, some orange in there as well.
Did you like the trim orange?
Mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah, around the doors, yeah, got that orange trim on there. One of my daughters hates it because she just hates the color orange. But I was like, I told her, I was like, because originally I was going to paint the trim white, and just how dark the blue got. And I looked at it, I was like, okay. And I remember I showed it to my supervisor, and I was like, "Yeah," because he asked me. He's like, "Yeah." He's like, you got Penn State colors?" I'm like, "No." I was like, "But I can see that." And if I did do the white, I was like, that would say, I'm a Penn State fan versus, put in the orange. Yeah, you got some, Chicago Bears. But yeah, my collection, yeah, it's a lot of Star Wars. Um, a lot of the Ninja Turtle stuff really got me, where I did not think that was going to consume me like it did.
Which turtles are you collecting?
So I won't say I have everything regarding NECA, but it's a good area I'm looking at of NECA, the cartoon stuff.
Toon Line, yeah.
the
Toon Line and
cartoon-
movie is like my bread and butter.
Yeah, the movies. What else? I got the 2012 Turtles, and then even I got intermingled the original 2003 Turtles I bought back in the day.
I still have my original line of 23 of 03 turtles and the cave. So
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And then like with the turtles, like I think the thing that really drew me to really dive into that was your videos of your diorama building. That, you know, like I didn't go in on the sewer layers. You know, I've got the party wagon. You know, when they re-released the street diorama, the cartoon one, I jumped on that. But you know, your videos of the sewer construction really drew me. That was like, ooh, I want to do
cool.
this. And
did you end up making your own?
Yeah, I've got 2 that I built.
Nice.
That I
send me a picture of that.
Yeah, I did one where I was always, because I did it shortly after I saw yours, and I'd never done anything like that. And then I did it, and then I think NECA had announced the first sewer layer, and then I looked at it, I was like, the one I built was a little too small. Let me make it bigger. And so I built the second one where it's more of the living room area. And then, you know, the other one that was too small, it's condensed that one side is a kitchen area and another side is, I guess, a dojo.
And that's what I did. But the dojo for Splinter is like this small, and it's on that shelf. It's still my original one. I've made other sewer layers since, and they've come out way better. I don't have the heart to get rid of that, even objectively it's pretty bad.
Yeah, because like, you know, I said, I credit you for your videos. You know, I did my own take on, you know, your Dimension X diorama.
Oh, cool. Cool.
So I did that. It's still unfinished. I did that like 3 years ago. It's still unfinished, where I haven't colored the background of it, but everything else is there. I had started on, and got to get to that too, Technodrome, you know, main area. And I've seen other videos, and I'm just like, there's too many designs and, you know, technical things in this. I'm like, I got to put this away for a bit.
I'm not like done making dials, but I am pretty much done making videos of dials. I think I peaked at the channel 6. That was like, after I did that, I was like, I don't know what else I can make that's better than this.
And that was one after watching, because I followed you throughout that channel 6 one. And I was like, oh man, I want to try that. Yeah. But then I got to the point, I was like, oh man, I don't have enough room for that.
I made the room. Unfortunately, I mean, it is huge, and I can't open one side of the closet because it's there. And I made it specifically to face. I remember the box of seeing the artwork for the turtle van. I was like, oh, it matches, so I have to display it facing this way, which means the sides have to open out this way. And I would put the weird pizza next to it. I was like, this is the only place it could go. So yeah, more dials maybe in the future. We're going to move along a little bit. This is the part of the show where we like to show off if we got anything. So before we do,
behold my stuff.
You are the guest, so I'm going to let you show off what you got first. But before you go, I'm going to show off with Victor got, because I did get Victor some goodies. So it is Victor's birthday coming up this week. I hope I didn't miss it. But either way, I got him a gift, so that makes up for not saying happy birthday. But a couple weeks ago, I did get him. He wanted Squid Man, and I told him that the Power of the Jedi line is great, and he didn't believe me. But then I said, no, you got to look for figures in this line. So I did show this off a few weeks ago, and one figure I was really excited to get Victor that I hope he's excited for is this guy.
That one right there. So I have that one. And
heavy.
That was a big deal back in the day.
Yeah, like I have mine, and I was like, dude, they're never gonna make this in vintage collection. You need to
know.
This might be the only one. I'm not sure.
I think so. Yeah, but that thing, because I've got I remember I got that back in the day, and I remember that was one I didn't really want, but I worked with a guy who knew a guy that was he's finding hard to find figures, and he came in one day. He was like, yeah, he's like, dude, do you have this figure? I was like, no. He's like, dude's selling it for pretty cheap. And I was like, all right, fine. I didn't think nothing of it. And then when I found out, oh, at the time, that one was going for a lot. It was like, oh, wow.
Well, I was telling Victor, I was like, on average, I'm seeing it for $70, but I saw it for like 45. I was like, so I jumped on it because I knew he wasn't going to go shopping for it. So I got him that. I think, what I do want for the Jabba's Palace scene is like that spider-like creature, and he comes in a 2-pack with that other creature with no legs.
Yeah.
That one is really expensive, but
Yeah.
those were Victor's goods for the week. Since he's not here, I spoke for him. So this time I'll open it up to you if you have anything you want to show off.
So I did, in the spirit of, Star Wars month and our conversation night, I did get Ghost Qui-Gon from the Obi-Wan series. It was one that I not so much passed on, but I didn't see out in the wild. But I guess much of like my collecting these days, especially with Black Series, I tend to wait on deals because I just think the prices on these things are ridiculous. And, especially the little you get for them, that I tend to wait on deals. And so like, especially like the Mandalorian Grogu wave that came off of Black Series, I was like, I am going to wait because I'm certain that on May the 4th, there's probably going to be a deal. And I wind up getting the 2-pack of Mando and Grogu for like $10 less at Target during that. And then this one, Amazon was having sale on random figures, and they had this one listed for like $10. And I was like, okay.
I already bitched about it on a previous stream, but the vintage collection Mando and Grogu for $27.99 is ridiculous.
Yeah, and especially like, you're getting figures that have, I mean, because like this one, I mean, yeah, he's a ghost, and so he's got nothing with it. And so it's like, because like, I had seen, because when Black Series started out, I was determined that I was going to be a completionist. And at one point I was doing I'm gonna buy one, keep in the box, and one to open up, especially when I start seeing people on Instagram back in the day doing all these things with photography and the figures and stuff. And I was like, wow, these things can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And as it's progressed, they won their, let's release another battle droid. Let's release another clone trooper.
Yeah, it's regressed. I think the way to do it is go back to the way they used to do it. And like, if you want to pack another battle droid, put it with a character people want.
Yeah.
You're going to sell it. People want more army builders. But when you keep just releasing stormtroopers, clone troopers, battle droids, like, I mean, they finally released Geonosis and Warriors, which is crazy.
Yeah.
But like, just keep releasing more, but put them with some of the Jedi you're never going to make that were made in the Saga collection. So
yeah, and then the when they first started out, they were on par with like Marvel Legends somewhat as far as what you're getting, or not so much Marvel Legends, but the classifieds. Yeah. You're getting like the first Han Solo they released, he came with 2 blasters, extra belt, 2 different sets of hands, and it was like,
not anymore.
why are we skipping on that? And they always use it will cost us more money to the consumer if we do that. It's like, it probably wouldn't. It's like, the big thing, people always talk about, including myself. Why are we getting Jedi without their robes?
Yeah.
Why can't we get a Jedi with a hand that's pushing? Things like that.
You get Jedi with trigger hands.
Yeah. It's like, why can't I get a Darth Vader that maybe he has just a fist, or maybe a hand that he's, doing that little number?
And that's why I always say, like, I've never gotten into Black Series because I was kind of watching from the side. I was like, the beauty of the original Star Wars line, whether it's the Vintage Kenner or Power of the Force 2 to like the early 2010s, was like, they're going to go so deep. They're going to make all these characters. Black Series will never do it. Vintage Collection even still won't do it. Hey, Gades, how you doing? Spaded One says, does the Technodrome count as a vehicle? Yes. And there's a few on the list that count as vehicles, but I also count them play sets, so we're gonna get to that. But I have a
And we
few
had a
things-
discussion about probably one that maybe we'll probably have a discussion about.
I have a few things. My brother's in town, and he picked this up for me. I think my cousin picked this up for me too, so I'm gonna have two to sell. So I might become a flipper there. But he did pick me up not so Jack Nicholson Joker.
Okay.
So I wish they make a Bane so we can round out these villains. I'll settle for a Bob, or I'll settle for. No, I really just want Bane and Bob. I don't think we'll get them. Generally,
And that's one of those things that that like I I talk about a bunch of stuff like the McFarlanes. At first, I was like, I'm not getting into those things, especially like I always fashioned myself that I was a huge Batman fan, but the McFarlanes, all the Batmans they come out with, I'm like, I have no idea what Batman that's from. I have no idea about the bat that cries or whatever with the Joker grin and stuff. And so I was like, but then I think I was out one night and saw they had one of the movie Batmans. Or no, I was at Best Buy and they had the Michael Keaton Batman and they had it for clearance. And I was like, let me get it. And then it kind of triggered. It was like, so now I got majority of the movie, McFarlane Batman.
I think like I have a line that I have a shelf that's just 90. It's 89 to like Batman and Robin. The shelf. I have the Batman Forever Batmobile, the 89 Batmobile. Christopher Reeves is randomly on that shelf, but the fact that he gave us Christopher Walken's character, the Penguins, the Duck, which is crazy.
Yeah.
He gave the Duck. I don't really. McFarlane is probably my least favorite line in my collection room, but he did make some good ones. So we'll talk about that. Gades, we're going to come back to your comment. I'm going to star that. I got one more thing. While I was buying Victor some old Star Wars, I decided to buy myself some. So. I'm missing a few Comtech figures. Co Bibble is a politician. He's not that exciting to collect, but I still kind of need him. I also needed this protocol droid. I think this is, if we're going in chronological order, this is the first protocol droid we see.
TC-14, yeah.
TC-14. And I grabbed it before the show. I grabbed my little... I did this last week, and you couldn't really hear it, but I just want to see what he says. That sounds terrible.
When those came out back in the day, I thought it was amazing. Like, wow. Because I remember back in the day, I used to do a lot of drawing and I draw Star Wars stuff and I would put little quotes from the movie to the side of them. And when those came out and I was like, oh wow, these are giving me quotes before the movie. And I know like last week you talked about the Anakin one. And at the time I was like, because I was deep in the Kool-Aid with Star Wars, especially with the prequels. And so when he says certain things, at that time of I'm a person, my name is Anakin. At the time, I was like, oh, wow, that is amazing. But hindsight looks like, that is a terrible line. And poor
terrible.
kid.
Yeah. Or like, I think one of the chips says, now this is pod racing. I was like,
yeah,
such cornball stuff.
And then they didn't sound like them either. And so that was a shame. But it was inventive.
One more time. This sounds pretty terrible. Actually, it's because this battery's dying. This might sound a lot better, actually. So move on. We got some toy news, not much, but before we get into our topics, so let me see. Let me get this up here. Not a lot because I want to get into the main topic, but we'll try to breeze through these kind of quickly. You brought this up, and I'm glad you did because Victor and I forgot to talk about it. But I'll be honest, if these weren't Mondo, I would get these. I can't justify the money for Mondo. And I never thought I'd say this. I wish Super 7 was making them because they'd be a little bit cheaper, but they would also kind of suck. I honestly just want Powerline.
So Mondo has got a chokehold on me right these days, especially with the animated series Batman. And I had ordered the Superman that they released a few months ago, and I won't say that I'm a fan of the Goofy movie. Like I love the songs from it. Eye to Eye and
with
Stand Back.
Yep.
And so I did jump in and order these. And one of the reasons why I decided to do it was because, you know, across the pond, you got NECA doing DuckTales. And
But
so it was like,
you don't think NECA would eventually do Goofy movie?
I'm certain they would, but it was one of those things that, like I said, that, you know, a lot of my collection is based on nostalgia. And
Yeah.
you know, the Goof Troop was kind of coming in as I was starting to tail off from stuff, and you know, seeing that NECA is doing DuckTales, that's like, I'm like, okay, so when you're gonna do Darkwing Duck, when you're gonna do Rescue Rangers, Tailspin, I want it all. And seeing this, I was like, yeah, I want to put those together.
If it's anything like the dinosaur collection, then I'll be really mad. I'll be real mad. Because you know, we only got famously 2 figures from that. But I jumped on those DuckTale figures. I know it's apples to oranges. Mondo quality, I think, is better, but I like to have things a little consistent. And these are bigger figures. These are not like 6-inch scale figures, right? These are big.
No, I think they are.
Oh, they are.
Yeah, I think they are 6-inch.
Yeah, just tell me they weren't. But no, anything Disney Afternoon, I will get these. I'll wait. We'll see if they come out with NECA. My favorite Goof Troop toys were like some Burger King toy, and they were like bowling. You would just like they each held a bowling ball, and you rolled them back, and they would like knock down the cardboard pins. It's pretty cool. Now you did mention the Batman animated line for Mondo. How many figures are they up to by now?
Oh goodness! So
And you're all in on this.
So I've started to go back and try and get what I missed out on. So right now I've got Batman, Robin, Joker, Two-Face, and Poison Ivy.
Damn,
And
they're all great. They're just like,
yeah, and
too rich.
I know they've got Clayface, the Phantasm, Mr. Freeze, Harley Quinn, Man-Bat, and Scarecrow.
These are expensive.
They are, yeah, yeah.
I guess I don't need to tell you. Like, these are pretty pricey.
They are, and like with this one, you know, it was one of those things. It was like, because I comment when they showed this on Instagram, that I was like, Mondo, you're killing my wallet here. I was like, I just ordered the Goof Troop stuff, and now you're about to drop this, and then I jumped into the real Ghostbusters figures that they released.
I might go back and get the Diamond Select ones, because I think that's the only chance of me actually getting those.
And then with this one, what I look at, I wonder is that like Two-Face is one of my favorite villains from Batman, and they've got the 2 different versions that they release of characters. That one character, one version will have different accessories. Like the Two-Face one that I got, it came with interchangeable hands, 2 pistols, a Tommy gun, a couple different heads, and like a extra torso, where one of the torsos is him in a straitjacket. And you would thought that, especially with a lot of those that I've seen of the deluxe ones, that it was sold out. But that Two-Face is still up on its site as like not sold out.
I think people are getting squeezed.
I maybe, but and so I wonder. I'm like, if that Two-Face isn't selling out, hasn't sold out yet, and I think that got released for order back in like maybe February.
So Goofy's 8 inches. Max is like probably as tall as a Marvel Legend.
Oh,
Powerline's not. I mean, they're probably still in scale with Marvel Legends and McFarlane, which is kind of fun. Yeah, so this is cool. I mean, hey, just these are fun. They are expensive. And damn, you're all in on these, so good for you. Just comment and show support. God bless anyone who has shelf space for Mondo stuff. Oh, yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah, I had to do a lot of redecorating around here, especially for the Mondo stuff. It was like,
yeah, they probably do look sick all set up. You gotta make a dial for them, man. Although that dial is gonna be the size of the wall.
Yeah. I'll just show you pictures, send you pictures of what I've got so far of those.
My cousin sent me this today, and I was kind of pissed because Robin is one of my favorite characters. Your Instagram handle is the R, so I always kind of caught that. But
yeah, it's that because like I've got the Robin logo tattoo as well.
oh, nice,
Yeah.
the '90s Tim Drake one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But Mattel keeps teasing these child toys, and I'm like, just show us what the collector version is going to look like, because I just spent $110 on the Mafex Robin, which is from Hush, so it's not the teenage Tim Drake. And I'm just like, I don't want to see all this gimmicky crap. Like, just show us the adult version. So
Yeah, because I can't remember which one. I just saw something.
there is no perfect Tim Drake 90s Robin as of today. There still
no, because I've got one a Kenner Tim Drake figure, 5 points articulation from, I think I got that back in like early 2000s. It came like in a pack where it was like Batman, Tim Drake.
I have that one. I think I think that was when Mattel had the line. If it's up on that shelf, or else I'll grab it. That is the best looking Robin. It's just not articulated. So if they just did that, but articulated.
Yeah, because I just saw somewhere. I don't know what company it is, but they're calling it Tim Drake, but you look at it clearly and it's like, no, that's Dick Grayson, but just in Tim Drake colors.
Yeah. I just want to stay in line with DC, so I put this one on there just because it pissed me off. And then since you are an animated fan, McFarlane,
that's the one there. Yeah,
McFarlane's dropping some crazy stuff. And I mean, he did the Robin in the red and blue, well, the red and black. Which was there an episode where this Dick Grayson gives up the red and black and then leaves to become Nightwing? I think there is a premise for that. I don't remember.
Yeah, that was in the was it New Adventures? But he was still in the red and green.
Oh, so this is just more of a concept.
Yeah, that I don't know. I think they were, from what I was seeing online, they were saying that that's gonna be Tim Drake Robin, and I'm like, no, that's Dick Grayson there, just in Tim Drake outfit.
But I mean, you got Montoya, which I think when DC Direct did the original line, she came in a box set with a bunch of villains and a big jail box set.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I mean, it's cool that he's doing these, but again, he's not gonna get to everyone, which sucks.
No.
So I threw these on there. This might be the last of the toy news that I want to talk about. Marvel Legends.
Okay.
I don't even care about Marvel Legends anymore. I hate to say it. The only thing of the whole release that I was pretty excited for was getting a new Professor X. And I don't even need it because my Professor X is fine. But I do like the chair. Were you excited about any of these?
No, because I'm not familiar with those Fantastic Four outfits. The Spider-Man set is pretty cool, but that lizard looks bad.
Looks like something from Space Ghost.
Yeah, because I just got that new one that came out.
The big monster one.
Yeah, I haven't opened up yet because space. And that looks really nice though. But yeah, I look at that. I'm like you said, that looks like Space goes coast to coast there.
I'm happy with my retro card lizard. I have enough Spider-Man. I don't need Hulk 2099. I don't like the Future Foundation, but I might buy another Professor X. So we'll see.
I'm kind of with you on that I might get that because I know with some of my Marvel Legends, especially more of because I always said that I think I've got a lot of like MCU figures, but a lot of my knowledge of Marvel came from things like X-Men the animated series and Spider-Man the animated series. Even there was a Spider-Man is Amazing Friends was like my gateway into those, and so like a lot of my X-Men stuff I started to kind of try to convert over to like the 97 figures.
Yeah. And I like the X-Men 97 figures that can fudge into your just like comic display. Like I think that cable is still one of the best cables. Although I didn't get him, I canceled him. But he looked good. I just I already have what am I going to do with like 4 cables? If they come out with the white and black one, like they released in the old Toy Biz line, I would get it. Okay. It's 40 minutes in. We didn't even get into our countdown list. Let's see. So starting at the beginning of the month, Victor and we did our favorite Star Wars action figures. Very different list. Of course, he had a lot of the original vintage Kenner stuff. I had lots of prequel stuff, so I'm sure he loved that. Then we did our favorite we did random Star Wars moments, worst moment, most annoying character, things like that. Continuing this month, maybe this will be our last Star Wars live stream. We are talking about vehicles and talking to Rodney. It sounds like he has a pretty knowledgeable base about different vehicles. I told him it didn't have to be movie related, so this is kind of all over the place. But Rodney, I've seen your list. There's some similarities, I'll be honest. And there's some cool things that you put in, so you could tell how deep in the lore that you are, because you put in some things there that I was like, interesting. So you are the guest. We're gonna go first with you. We're gonna try to breeze through these, not too quick. We'll open up the conversation, but let's start with your number 10. And this one, was there a toy for this? Gady said, generally loved all the Kenner vehicles, but the Star Destroyer was a hate crime. I didn't know there was a toy of it. I couldn't find a picture of it. So
I know there's an antique store in my town that has.
I'm gonna look it up while you're talking.
I found a lot of things toy related, and they had it was a Star Destroyer toy, where basically all it was like a little like bridge.
Oh, that thing. That
and
that is
it had like Vader's chair.
That is what we're calling the Star Destroyer playset.
Yeah. Like you said, it didn't have to be movie related. It was more toy related, and this is one of the ones that for me I had on the list because of the movies. That everyone always talks about. Like I said, I was around that era, but I don't recall seeing the first Star Wars in theaters. But you always hear people who were around that time, who were teenagers, adults, and whatnot, always talk about that opening scene of that thing coming overhead and how it was nothing they'd ever seen before.
Gady's wanted an audacious USS flag kind of destroy. Yeah, I think this thing was made to be like the USS flag.
Yes. And then like I said, because when you see it in the first movie, like I said, people always talked about that for opening scene was mind blowing, but you only saw like 1, maybe 2 in the first movie. Then you go to the next movie, and there's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, and
then you got Vader's, Star Destroyer that is massive. And it's like, oh my gosh. And then, and I always tie that first shot of that, I always tie that into in Spaceballs, where you hear him running. And then he talks about, he's like, the ship is too damn long. If I'd walk, the movie would be over.
Yeah.
And, and things like that. And then I don't know if you ever read the book Lost Stars.
No.
But they, in that, the original movies, the technology was only there to give you so much. And as things progress throughout the years, some things have been blown up. And in Lost Stars, they go in there talking about things that happened during the original trilogy. And so they give descriptions of how massive the Star Destroyers are, and like how much they hold, how many people run them. Even talking about like the Death Star and how massive that thing's, how many Star Destroyers can fit in that thing, how many ships, all these things. And so that for me is the reason why I put it on the list of like just the sheer just scope of it, from seeing the movies. And yeah, you're right that this should have back in the day probably been,
flag
the
level.
Star Wars version of the USS Flag.
Michael, we're going to come back to your comment a little bit later. Stay tuned. All right, so this is your number 10. If I was going to put the picture of that little dinky playset on, but I didn't do it. But also coming up later, I think there's something we could compare this to of how they could have done it. So we'll get to that. My number 10, which is a little different than yours. We were talking before the show, like, so we based some of these picks on like, it's just because I never had it and I always wanted it. But it's also my number 10 because I considered the Millennium Falcon more of a play set than anything, because a lot of these vehicles you can hold with one hand and, you know, have them dogfight with another vehicle. This one, it was a little hard to do so. And, you know, I kind of feel that way about some other things, but it looked awesome. I never had it. I always wanted it. The electronics, the lights, the open compartments, thought it was awesome. But it would have been higher on my list if I actually got my hands on it. But I love the Millennium Falcon. So you guys might see this on the list again, just saying.
So judging from your past videos, I think I may know what your number 1 is, but we'll get there.
Do you want to call it now?
Nah, let's
Okay.
You know, we'll wait.
Okay. I'm curious. You're number 9, and I didn't know which one, so I put the one that I had, only so I didn't, you know, I'll tell you why. But you go for it. Interceptor.
So this was one of the ones on my list. I think there are, and I'm looking at my phone as I wrote out there. 1. So the Star Store was 1, but 2, 3. So there are 4 vehicles on this list that I don't have. And they're kind of, you know, they're on here based on similar to the Star Destroyer, that, you know, you have something simplistic as a TIE fighter where, you know, it's an H with a, you know, circle in the middle. And then, you know, the second movie you get the TIE, or actually going back, you got Vader's TIE fighter, which looks like a bow tie, which is pretty cool. Then the second movie, you got the bombers, which is Vader's, but with a second, you know, circle. And then you move forward into Return of Jedi, which is my favorite Star Wars movie. And you got these interceptors where they're just sleek. They took the design and just made it sleeker. And then, you know, you go into, if you know, look into the background of the story, the stories behind the vehicles, they make mention that the TIE, you know, interceptors were built for speed. I think they were even at one point equipped with a hyperdrive as well. And so for me, you know, and then, you know, one thing I will say too, when we discuss this topic, I wanted to, but I couldn't. I wanted to try and find something from the sequels. There are no vehicles from the sequels that stand out because they're all redesigns from the originals.
Me too. Yep, totally agree.
And, you know, and then you have something like Kylo Ren's TIE fighter, which is basically a version of the Interceptor with the cockpit, I guess modified to look like the Millennium Falcon's cockpit.
And the main vehicle in the sequels is the Millennium Falcon.
Millennium Falcon.
There's nothing new or original about, like, which also was a detriment to collecting, because like you didn't, not that they gave a lot of figures for that, but like it just did not make it fun to collect, because you're like, there's nothing. Yeah, everything got a paint job, but
it's just like, yeah, you got, oh wow, X-wing, but it's blue. Oh, a TIE fighter, but now it's black, and it's like, you know, as much guff as George Lucas had got back in the day for the prequels, you could always say that, well, he came up with new things. He didn't just retread looks of old stuff, that he came up with new stuff.
Yeah, I agree. So this is your number 9. I agree with you. We might see some other TIE fighters come up on the list. This is the one that I had, so I didn't ask you if you had it or if you have, but we'll talk. We're gonna come back to this, so we'll talk about it in a bit. My number 9 is simple, and there's a lot of most of my favorites of Star Wars has to do with the toys, so there's a bias there, but just doesn't always have to be the biggest, but it has to be the most fun. And I always thought the Scout Troopers bike was so much fun. You can get it with the Scout Trooper, you can get it with Luke, you can get it with Leia. So it was a clever way to get your parents to buy different ones. And they all came with the same feature. There's a button on the back where, like, if you wanted to recreate these things exploding, as you were kind of whizzing it by with your hand, you can hit that button and it falls into 3 pieces. Your figure goes flying.
Mhm.
Genius. Loved it.
Yeah, I wanted to put that on the list, and there's a couple that we'll get to here that I, like you said, playability.
Mhm.
And I always remember the version of this that came out in the 80s, and you had 5PO8, and I had that one, and you couldn't fit that figure on there to save your life. It just couldn't, it couldn't sit on it. It couldn't, and so for me, it was always one as a kid, I can't do nothing with this. But like the version you got, my brother had, and it was like, man, you really, they did it with this. This is the one I wanted as a kid. But I could never get that thing to stand up, save my life.
So Power of the Force 2. They gave everybody muscles and they fixed some things.
Yeah.
So this is my number 9. Again, doesn't always have to be the biggest. Your number 8. I had this. This thing was dope. I have mentioned this before. This is the one thing I don't have because I fell on it when I was playing guitar in my room and I fell back and I just like crushed it.
So this reason why I have it so low is that, like you, I didn't have this. I didn't have it. And, I had opportunities to get it because antique store that I go to time to time for the longest time had this. And I kept just like, it'll be there another time I come back. It'll be there. It'll be there. It'll be there. And then finally, when I was like, I'm going to pull the trigger, it was gone. But I just remember, seeing the pictures of it back in the day. And, it was one of those that I was like, if I had this thing, I would just been in love that all the stuff you can do with this thing.
Yep.
It was humongous. It looked about as accurate as you think it would look to the movie.
Yep.
As far as the inside.
Cammy, the Royal Starship is one of my grail items. Now, the more I talk about this throughout this month, I've been looking at this and I'm like, I'm ready to pull the trigger. I know it's a couple. This retailed for $99.99 in 1999. And what I remember most is that my birthday is right next to Christmas. So sometimes I get a gift and my family's like, Merry Birthmas. They're just like, I convinced my aunt to get me this. And it was a dual Christmas birthday gift. I'll never forget because this was like not normal. This was not a normal gift. But I don't know, maybe she's feeling, generous that year. And I remember this couldn't fit anywhere else but the floor, so it lived on the floor. And I was just learning guitar, and I was playing, I was rocking out, and I took one step back and demolished it, just crushed it. So I think I need this back in the collection. So, howdy, Rowdy, how are you? All right, so this is your number 8. I did not put this on my list because I do consider this a play set, and you could use it as a vehicle, but it's like you all hands on deck. I love the prequel vehicles. I mean, and the Naboo Starfighter has come back. I mean, Mando's riding it now. He's driving a busted up one, which I think is cool. But like, I still have this. It's intact. It's still the electronics still work. But even seeing it on screen, it was so sleek. The X-wing's dirty. It looks like it's made from a bunch of different parts. The Naboo Starfighter was a complete departure, which I think was what made it shine, which was what made the prequels unique. Everything's polished. You're not in this like state of decay like the trilogy's in. And then, like we said, the sequels just kind of. So this is where the prequels stood out, and I think it's their vehicles, the design, and then Naboo Starfighter got like an upgrade every movie, which was cool.
Yeah, because I know that I still have my. Matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now. And what I always loved about that is that I think it goes back to like the trailer. You see the shot of the thing come from the bottom, grab R2, pop them up, and it's like, whoa, like that's how we're doing this now. And then just as much flack as those movies get for the overuse of CGI. I mean, they did just
Yeah.
the look of those things was just phenomenal.
Naboo had the best aesthetic. Shipbuilders make it shiny and sleek. Totally agree. And if you did have this, more than likely, you did have the Vulture Droid set, which I didn't put it on the list, but I thought it was awesome because in that pack you got 3 Vulture Droids and a handle to hold all 3. And one of the things I always hated about the Cloud Car is that the original vintage Kenner one came like something similar where it was 2 cars. And I don't think we did not get a proper upgrade in Power of the Force 2. It was a downgrade because we got like an individual Cloud Car, which looked weird. But no, I agree, Rowdy.
So they did do a Cloud Car, and I do have it.
From Power of the Force 2?
Not Power of the Force. I want to.
The Power of the Force 2 one was just like it was just an individual one. So they might have made it years later where they made the dual car.
Yeah, because I can't remember what line it was known under, but I've because I still have the box for it because when you open the box up, it creates a diorama for Cloud City.
That's cool. I do have the Micro Machine of Cloud City. Does that count? All right. You're number 7, I think.
So a little show and tell.
Oh, you actually have it. Oh, is that the Saga Collection version?
No, this is the one that was released back.
Can you bring it up again?
Attack of the Clones came out.
Can you bring it up again?
Yeah. So so these did not originally come with it.
Oh, that's what I was gonna say. So you have the original gunship, but you have upgraded bubble gunners.
Yeah. This was from with the Attack of the Clones line, the big blue box. It didn't come with anything on the bubbles, and I had years back when the exact same one.
But you did get gunners in an individual figure, but they came with these weird, like it wasn't
like
screen
little,
accurate.
like green laser thingies and stuff, like little stands. Yeah.
Which bubble gunners are those? Because I would get those to match mine.
So I can't recall because I know like when like I talked about there was little pockets in my collecting. My wife, when we started dating, and I have stories about all this stuff to go for days. She had turned me on to eBay, and that's where I found a lot of stuff that I had missed out on, and had found those. And I forget what line they're from because I think because there's sites like Rebel Scum that used to go on a lot to look at things and like, okay, yeah, I have that, I have this, I need that and stuff. And because I know there were versions that came out after this that actually had those attached.
Yeah, they came with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think those at the time, when they released them, it came separate because I know they came with some little stand piece that I can't recall they're from, but yeah. So this one, it's I for me, I have it on as one, because like you said, the prequels, they did a lot of like just expanding certain things, and and then you go into like the Clone Wars cartoon where they take this thing and expand even more of like showing it in space. And then I just love that you had 2 guys up front, and then you could put whatever characters in this thing and stuff. And I always said that my one regret at the time was I didn't buy 2, so that I could do Mace Windu on one with Qui-Gon Obi-Wan and Anakin on the other. And nowadays, I didn't back the HasLab. I wanted to, but I was like, that's just a little too much. And I once again, like, I don't think I got the room for that thing.
I did a video of why that HasLab was dumb, and I got annihilated in the comments. Because I was like, listen, if you're making a HasLab of something that's never been done before and it hasn't been done right, I mean, this has been done right multiple times. And I said, I'm not comparing the original design to the HasLab and saying that this one's perfect, but it's pretty good. And there's lots of things you could have given us other than that. And man, people did not like that.
Yeah, and and this thing, I mean, no shade to anyone that did back that, because I'm certain when I see those things on Instagram and stuff, I'm gonna be jealous that wow, that thing looks amazing. But this thing still has playability to it.
Oh yeah.
And then the thing, so it's like nowadays, it sits up on one of my tables, and I use it to as a Clone Wars set piece of
and you've
Clone
got
Wars.
it. Saga collection, the I think this was the Saga collection, maybe the Legacy collection.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, it went by Saga collection. Yeah,
and now this was heavily featured in Shadow Lord, where this thing was all over those episodes. Like, they were, like stormtroopers were just getting dropped out of this thing like crazy.
Yeah.
This one you might see again on the list, but this is the Jango Fett slave one. This was the only one I had. Otherwise, I'm sure Boba's would have ranked on my list. But this one did come with some different bells and whistles. I remember loving this chase scene because they like cut the music. It was silent, and it definitely built some tension. And although the color scheme is not the original, I think this added to the lore of the slave one because Jango's colors were different, which means I think the implication is that Boba Fett took this, gave it a paint job, took it later. So this is the origin of that, which I thought was cool. I love this one. I did pair it with my Starfighter, which I loved. And one of my favorite things, which is not accurate to the movie, but it came with a clear handle attached to the back. And this goes to like what do I consider a playset or a vehicle? If I can hold one of the vehicles in one hand and the attacking vehicle in the other, that was always fun. And I remember the clear handle on the back, not movie accurate, but it made it more fun to play with.
So I still have this one.
It did come with the sonic boom.
It did, yeah.
There's like those little round. It was like a little round red pellets.
Yeah. You drop it in and it's like just plops out and stuff. It had a little catch to hold it in, and you push the button, it'll drop out.
And I think the missile that's firing in the middle was like you turned it and it launched, I think.
And then because I still have that one. And it was one that, it's kind of one of those things that there's certain things that I had multiples of, and started to kind of put some of the multiples away, that if my nephew ever got into this, into Star Wars, and, he come to visit, it's like, here you go, here's your stuff to play with. But I don't think I'll ever get into that because kids these days, just tablets and whatnot.
The one thing about any of the slave ones is that they can never be screen accurate, because they would need to be huge if you're gonna like walk the figure on with carbonite and things like that. It would have to be really big to scale, but I mean they did try. So
yeah,
this is on my list, and
I remember picking that one up back in the day, because that was released because when they used to do, I guess, the Force Fridays and release stuff at midnight. I remember getting that midnight when they released the Attack of the Clones figures.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Like when they released this particular one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I would just we would go to the store, whatever was there. Like my mom would buy it, and then it would just sit there till Christmas or birthday, which sucked. Like I knew I had it. Like I said, we got to go get it now. But it's like, well, you're not getting it now. It's just going to sit in my closet until... And I think this movie came out in like spring, which also sucked. I was waiting until December. The Ghost, interesting one. Do you have it? This is a HasLab, right?
So I don't. And I think this is probably the last one on my list that I don't have. And so why I put this on here is, Rebels, when that came out, I was hesitant on it. That I was like, it looks a little too kiddie. We're coming off of Clone Wars, which was great.
I feel like the first two seasons were a little kiddie, and then it gets more.
Yeah, and I always told people, because I tried to get my brother to watch it, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not into that. It just looks too kiddie for me." But I always told people, give it a chance. That there was an episode in the first season when they brought in Grand Moff Tarkin, and I always thought when they brought him in, that was just a game changer for the season, for the series, because he was a constant throughout the rest of the first season, and then you come in the second season, and now you bring in Vader, and so it took off from there. And with the Ghost, to me, the Ghost feels like any kid that Rebels was their first, their gateway into Star Wars. I would think that the Ghost was that kid's Millennium Falcon.
That's true. That's a good point.
That I would think it's that kid's Millennium Falcon, and then and on top of that, the it was what, 3 vehicles in one?
Yeah, it's like detached and stuff.
Yeah, and it was like, and then the HasLab. I mean, someone earlier mentioned about the Naboo fighters, their Grail. For me, I think this is my Grail. That if I can find at a reasonable price, which I probably won't, it's something I want to have.
And I think what stinks, and this goes to another vehicle we'll talk to about in a little bit, is that the reason why like something like this or something else didn't make my list is because think of what we got in the 70s, 80s, 90s for like just regular retail price. Vehicles probably, depending on the size, would not go more than $50.
Yeah.
And I mean, we would have gotten a version of this that was more kid friendly. Obviously, this has tons of deco and all that other stuff, but we would have gotten a version of this that every kid could have had.
Yeah.
And this just never got a release like that, which is why I did not put it on my list.
Yeah, and the only drawback I see from people I've heard that who have it, HasLab, you would think they're throwing everything in there, and I've seen this compared to what they call, I guess, the BMF Millennium Falcon. But this has no lights to it. It has no electronics to it. For all the money people paid for it and the size, it's got no lights or anything to it.
Yeah,
and I think that's a shame on this thing.
And what they're probably looking at some either vintage Kenner or Power of the Force 2 Kenner secondary market prices and say, they're paid this.
Yeah.
It's still good. Still great, though. I, too, put the Interceptor on my list for a lot of the same reasons you did. But I had a regular TIE fighter. I never had the Darth Vader bomber or the bow tie shaped one. But to me, this one just always looked a little more badass. It was sleek. It looked more menacing with the sharp design. One of my favorite things, and the TIE fighter did this too. Not sure if the bomber or Vader's did it, but right at the edge of the bubble, there were these buttons. So when you're playing with it, you can hit those buttons, and then the wings would fly off. So you kind of have this cool like destruction scene. And if I was holding an X-wing in one hand and this in the other hand, I would only hit one button, which felt more real because then it can kind of spin and crash. So in the eyes of a kid playing with this, that I love this, and I loved it more design-wise than a regular TIE fighter. So Interceptor twice. So I think is this the first one that we intersect a little bit?
I think it's the first one. Well, I think it will be. I think it will be the first one.
Okay.
Or yeah.
Continue on. You have an X-wing on here. I didn't know which X-wing, so I just put Power of the Force.
So
get you up there again. Which one is that?
This one. So I want to say this was the vintage collection from like early 2010s. And then I remember I seen a version of it that came with all this swamp stuff.
That's cool.
And so I remember I had gone on eBay and found all this stuff separate to just add to mine.
The blue box seemed to be my preference. Or I hope you didn't break anything.
No, so that's one of the drawbacks. Well, at least with the one I've got is one of the guns doesn't stay on securely.
I had a cheap X-wing, which was smaller, but then I got like the Saga Collection one, and that one was like way bigger. It had a lot of grit and dirt on it. It was supposed to be the one that like crash lands in the swamp.
Yeah, I remember seeing that one. Yeah, because I think it came with like
it didn't have those swamp pieces though.
There's one that I think came with like it was a 2-pack of like that and Vader's TIE Fighter.
That's cool. So Vintage Collection has released an X-wing.
Yeah, because like with this one, when I was a kid, I didn't have a full size X-wing. What I had though
A
is
mini
I
rig.
don't, no, I don't know what the company was. I'd like to think it was maybe Micro Machines, but I'm not sure. But one of the things about it that I remember was it came with this little like Luke Skywalker figure you put in, no posability, nothing. But when you hold it, it had this big like lever in the back of it, and when you push it in, it would kind of like explode,
Oh, that's cool.
and it was held together by like a string, like a plastic string and stuff. And and then when you want to put it back together, you just strap it back together, fly around, hit that thing. Um, but then like my brother, when he started getting toys, there was another version, and that was one of the things too with like when they came out with the original Power of the Force line, it was a lot of redos of stuff that when I was a kid. And so I remember that the X-wing that he got was similar to ones that was released when I was a kid, that the R2 didn't come out. You press the R2 was embedded into it. You press it, and that's how the wings open up.
I think that's the kitty one that I have was like that, but then the later one I got, R2 could come out.
And like the one you got here, I remember that was one of the first ones I was like, whoa, okay, they've made this almost accurate that R2, you can take R2 out, put it in, and then the cockpit looks big enough, because the other one, the cockpit, he was in there, or whatever figure put was in there like a sardine in a can. And this one they open up, and like similar with this one, you got a little slot where it's got the little computer that comes out when he flying to the Death Star. And so this one, like I said, it was, as I got older, and a lot of things they come out with, it's like, wow, one of them's going to come up, it's like, wow, like if I had this when I was a kid, like I just been in heaven. You could just take me at that point.
I remember I had like the kid version, and then I was working for this like lady, and I was like 16, and she knew I liked Star Wars, and she got me the better version, like as a Christmas bonus, I guess. I'll never forget. But yeah, I worked for her, and she knew I liked Star Wars, so like she's like, "Oh, I got you this for Christmas." I was like, "Cool." This is one that I never had. I had to use my imagination a little bit. I had the Micro Machine version of the MTT from the Battle of Naboo, and it opened up to the big Gungan warrior battle scene. But years later, I saw that this came out, and I was like, damn, I missed out. This is something that if I was a kid and I had this, it came with a whole bunch of battle droids. I don't think they were super articulated, but this is what I used the Micro Machine version for, but I can never recreate that scene of when they were retracting out and all activating. And I think that is a hidden gem of the prequels. I think a lot of people kind of discount that scene, but when the music goes silent, they're all coming out of the MTT, all the battle droids are activating. I loved it. So for that, I'm putting it here on the list, even though I never had it. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I second that that scene, effects are going on, music, and then it stops, and then all of a sudden you just hear sirens, and that thing open up, and them things come out, and it's like, what is going on here?
And then think of all the complaints about the CG in the prequels. I would tell anybody, go back and watch that scene. The CG in that section was so good. Like the shine on the surface of the battle droid's head when they do a close up, like that is where they actually got it right. So they did make a soda can version of this where I think it came with a bunch of Pepsis. If I had that, I would have used that with my toys too. But making this years later, I would have loved this. All right, this is one. Again, didn't know which one you liked, but this is the Imperial Shuttle. I never had it. I had a Micro Machine version of this, but did you have this, or is this one you wanted? Oh, you have it right here. Let's check it out. Which version of that is this?
I want to say it's that version.
And that looks good. That looks real good.
That in all honesty, This is probably, I would say it's probably my second favorite ship ever. And this was, so I have that. And I also have this,
Ooh, which one's that?
the mini rig version.
The mini rig. Nice.
It's missing the top piece, but this is one of the few holdovers from when I was a kid.
That's awesome.
So when I was a kid, that was my holy grail. That was my holy grail. That, like I said, when Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, and for me, when people talk about the original Star Wars, seeing that ship come over the screen and stuff, that was the feeling I got first time seeing this ship come out of the Star Destroyer. Because it was like, whoa, what is this? And I'm just amazed that it's like it's got these wings at the top and then comes down, and then all of a sudden, it goes into the Death Star, and then you got that iconic scene of Darth Vader walking down the ramp with the smoke and everything. And it was like, I don't know anything about this ship, but my God, I love it. And then what enhanced it for me was that, a little bit later in the movie, the Rebels are using it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and as a kid, I'm thinking, whoa, so Han Solo's not going to be in the Millennium Falcon. He's got a new ship. Oh, wow. But then, as you grow up, it's like, oh, they Trojan horse the whole thing.
Yeah, which is cool. Like this never sees battle.
Yeah, it doesn't. And then what you hear the stories about too. And, the stories, stuff. And this thing sucks in battle. It's got no shields. It's got no shields, nothing. It's just basically, it's like a fancy, ship to fly Vader and the Emperor and stuff around. But as a kid, like I said, my parents had got me that little thing, but they had never got me the big version. And so for the longest time, I was like, that's my holy grail. Before I finally close my eyes, I've got to get that ship. And I want to say it was back in 2000 and like 2015 or so. I just one day I went on Craigslist and just typed in Star Wars toys or something. And there was a guy in my area that had a listing for Star Wars toys and had that ship.
That's awesome.
And so I was like, oh, okay. And so my wife, I told her, I was like, hey, I'm going to go meet this guy and get this thing. And she was like, well, I can go with you and you can consider, I guess, your birthday present as well, because it was like my birthday or day after or something. And so met the guy and he had that. And then he had a couple other things as well, where it was like, hey, I'll throw these in for, decent prices and stuff. And so I remember I had gotten that. I had gotten a snow speeder and the chicken walker.
Nice.
But that one, to me, it was just, like I said, it was my holy grail for the longest time. And I've often said too, whenever Hasbro talks about we're going to do a HasLab, or if there's any vehicle really that could use a redo, it's this one. It's this one because, this one, the cockpit, you only fit 2 figures in it. You got a back part to it, but there's really nothing there. And, as a kid, like I said, I didn't have it. So what I used to do, that, because my parents would often tell me, we're going to get that for you. It's like, they never would. But in the meantime, because I'm pretty sure, most of y'all in the chat or any other kid that in that time when you watch those movies, you would have your toys out and you would play with them as the scene was going on. And so because I didn't have that, what I would used to do, I had the Slave One at the time. And so I would use that as a substitute for the Imperial Shuttle for when they're going on to Endor. And so I would cram in Han and Chewie and Leia and all them in there. And that'd be my ship in place of the Imperial Shuttle as, we're going to Endor to shoot down the shield generator and stuff.
Yeah, I had a lot of places. Like I remember, I like, especially with GI Joe, I had like just army builders that. I mean, I only had one, but like that would stand in as my Cobra commander. But when you're a kid, you don't care. You're just like, I need to stand in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I think the mini rigs are friggin' awesome. So that's cool that you have the mini rig. This one never sees a lick of battle, but it's simple. And again, this is another one that was released in the vintage collection where I thought, I mean, I already have a perfectly fine version of it. Like this version was great. I think the hood pops up. You had a place to hold Luke's rifle. Years later, learning how they like did this effect in the original version with like mirrors, I thought was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, to your point before, like in the imagination of a kid, this thing did see a lot of battles within my toys. So I would always pair this one with the speeder from Naboo that was like a teal sleek
Yeah.
color. You know, they didn't make sense together, but it was just fun to kind of do that. But that Naboo speeder was one that I would use in place until I had this one, and I did like this one.
Yeah, because I my brother had that version, or not so much that version, but one of the older versions of that. But you know, they didn't really make many changes on them throughout the years until recently. And I'd like to look at the new one, but I ain't spending $80 on that thing.
No, and I remember seeing it, thinking like, I have that already, and there's not much different to sway me.
Yeah, so I do have like the Black Series version, which is pretty nice.
Which is cool because it's bigger, so at least it has that.
Yeah.
All right. Seeing this one again in future years in the original version that we've seen. I think you got it out. Now I had this in the Micro Machine version, and that opened up to other scenes, but I never had this one.
And then open it
That's
up.
Cool.
Got some people in there, and then. So as I mentioned before, you know, the version I had back in the day was my substitute for my Imperial shuttle. And because I had this one and we talked about it, I have the Saga one as well. And of all these that, you know, from when I was a kid up to now, I think this was one of the ones that's like they did a great job of really blowing it up, of advancing it. And you talked about that there wasn't enough room and stuff on there, and like it still kind of doesn't have enough room that when you watch a movie and put Captain Solo in the cargo hold and he's walking up, he's tiny compared to the ship.
Yeah.
But still, like with this one, it's got where I showed you that little compartment where I got some like guys in there, which I use that primarily for my Book of Boba Fett figures. Which shame that show stuff. But also in the front part of it, because that's another thing that the changes in it. So like my brother had this one, and this was like just an updated version of the one I had, and as you can see on the box. And that was one of the things that was so confusing to me about this ship was, where does Boba Fett pilot this thing from? Because there's a little switch on the side of it that you pull up and down for this thing to go, show up. But I would always think that, well, this is where he put Han Solo at when he was taking the Jabba the Hutt. And so I would always have this thing down and Boba Fett writing here, but then it's like as time goes on, it's like, no, that is how he flies it, that he's upright in the thing. And so like with, and then like, I think, the one you showed earlier, you could fit 2 figures in the cockpit.
Mm-hmm.
And then with this one, you can fit 3 figures in the cockpit. And then like, it was like, okay, so where do I put Han Solo at? And then let me pull it back up one time. So it's like, where do I put Han Solo at? And then you just open this little piece up and you see the 3 seats. That's where you put Han Solo at.
That's cool. That's funny.
And, and then, in this one, and I think, going back to what we said about George Lucas in the prequels. This was one of those ones that, when you hear, okay, Boba Fett's going to be in the second movie, but he's going to be a kid. Okay, whatever. But then, in the Empire Strikes Back, the ship doesn't do much. And it's like, whatever. But then you come into the prequels and then you get that iconic sound just disappears and then you just see this thing drop. The sonic wave come out and you bang or whatever. And, it's like, oh my God, that was incredible to when, I think it was in Mandalorian season 2. And they brought the ship back, and I'm sitting there watching. I was like, man, if they don't do that, they just did it. All right, yep, there we go.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about before how the sequels only repainted things. This is a case where it happened earlier, but like it flowed with the story, so it made a lot more sense.
Oh yeah,
right.
And I just hate too that they, there was that controversy a few years back where you couldn't call it. They didn't want to call it the Slave One anymore.
I think it's just one of those things. Nobody was really complaining about it. Nobody was complaining about Princess Leia's outfit.
No.
That's just a weird Disney thing it's a Disney-ism.
Yeah, that was like, who was this hurting? It's like, but yeah.
Just Disney gonna Disney. All right, here's our second similar one. I think I said mostly everything about this, but again, I had the 2 versions. I had the kind of the baby, not baby, but like more of the childlike version. But when they released this again and it had tons of more detail, I did get the blue box version, which is not the one featured. But again, that one had more deco. It was supposed to look like it was just landing in Dagobah. Like, I just love that X-Wing. But now I had 2, and I always thought, like, if you keep one further in the back, it had like that forced perspective, so it's allowed to be a little smaller. But yeah, that one, I remember that one that I got. It came with like all the gear from the one like Yoda's rummaging through and throwing all the crap out. And it came with that. I don't think it came with a Luke. Did it come with a Luke? I think it did come with a Luke with a backpack, if I recall correctly. Okay. So it did come with that, which is kind of strange. He didn't come in as a X-Wing fighter outfit, but it was still fun. So second similarity, since we already talked about this, I'm gonna move on. Zeus, hello. How are you?
Hello.
And what you got next on your list? ATAC. So I put this on a list of favorite play sets because same thing with the Royal Starship. Like, you need 2 friends at least to move the legs for this to move, but it is technically a vehicle.
So let me see if I can get mine here. So I have a different version of that.
And this is actually one of the only vehicles from the sequels that I liked, because the walkers in the sequels looked a lot more menacing. That's awesome. Which version is this?
This is
the original?
No, I want to say it's the vintage collection. That this one. So let me see if I can get it here.
I think it's monstrous.
Yeah, it is. It's humongous. That you got this little joystick here. They can move the neck.
That's awesome.
And then open it up. You got a little cargo area.
Damn. That is vintage collection?
I think it is.
I didn't even know they made it.
Because this is another one that, I'm visiting the antique store and I'm just walking through and I don't see anything that catches my eye. And then all of a sudden I see that. And I was like, oh my God. And I think I played a pretty good penny for it, but it was missing some things too. And so it's pretty much rebuilt. The only things I'm missing, like I never got to getting any, eventually I will, some pilots for it. And then in the back part, there's a cargo bay for like some speeder bikes.
That's not the one I had. The handle control the head was inside. Yeah, I remember that was, I think, the Power of the Force one, or maybe the original one was controlled by the handle and the inside the head. So that's cool that it's made from the thing on top.
Yeah, so and then like it has like his headlights and you hit a couple buttons and it'll say some phrases and some what's some things some sound effects and stuff and but yeah, I mean this one, you know, as a kid, you often wonder, coming out of the first Star Wars and going to Empire, how do you top, the Battle of the Death Star and just the scope of it, and you come up with these things.
Yeah.
And just, like you said, because Star Wars is one of those movies that, the series for the most part, it's one of those that I'm like, I try to do a deep dive and like, because my wife at times she'll sit with me and she's like, God, I hate watching a movie with you, especially Star Wars, because you'll throw in your little quips about things that you read about or learned, how they did this and how I did that. And, you go back and they're on like a blue screen with like snow and it's all stop motion.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, that is incredible. And then, and then on top of that, it's like, in the battle, the rebels come out firing and their lasers aren't making a dent on it. And it's like, and the movie's called The Empire Strikes Back. And it's like, as a kid, first time seeing that, it's like, oh wow, the Empire came to play. That they, they're shooting, snow spears out of the sky. The only way you can take them out is to wrap their legs together or somehow throw a grenade in its belly. And then, it blows up the shield generator. And, for me, one of the things I've always said is that how did they get those things on the ground and get them back up?
How they dropped them off.
Yeah, it's like how they get them things back up.
And I mentioned a bunch of times, but like I think just recreating Hoth, this battle was always my favorite. Quizu says my parents let us get the AT-AT and the X-Wing, Boba Fett, Imperial Guard, a couple others like the Imperial Officer and Pig Guard. I never had a Gamorrean Guard. I think I need one.
I still have my original, and then I bought some ones, I want to say the Power of the Force line that I've got in my Jabba's diorama set.
I did have Friar Tuck from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I wish I had a time machine to go back and buy everything that was there. Somehow, I've gotten rid of a lot of my childhood toys. I have everything Star Wars that I've ever had, which is cool. And it was all vintage lineup with the original releases. That's awesome to have. That's pretty cool. Now, this is a good one. And I'd say, like, this is the only redesign in the sequels I liked because the AT-AT Walker seemed a little more gorilla-like.
Yeah.
Like the way like the feet were.
Yeah.
And then like the way that they showed it like planting its feet, I always thought looked super cool.
And then, because, like I said, I struggled to find something from the sequels that I really liked. I even, was thinking about like, Rogue One, that, there's not really much there, that there's that one ship, but it's like, okay, but even Rogue One, I just love that scene of, you've got the walkers on the ground and then the one guy fires the bazooka at it and it hits it. And then just like looks back like, are you serious?
Yeah. Next on my list, it's a simple one, but it's the battle tank. Not this particular vehicle, but this was a vehicle that I thought like solidified it for me. When I was collecting, I would bounce from toy line to toy line until I found like what I really liked. Like my brother had wrestling, and then what I liked about Star Wars is like I could finally no gimmicks, no like Turtles did a lot of off-screen things that you would never see, but I remember the battle tank being like, I can do exactly what you see on screen with this toy, and that's why I loved it. So the actual toy was fun. It had some battle damage. It had some like pieces that would break off, some firing pieces. And it would have been cool to have multiple, but I did only have one. They've repainted this multiple times throughout the years, but I just thought it was a cool vehicle and kind of had like a shovel like look. I did have the mini rig version of this, which
Mm.
was always cool to pair with, but I did like the battle tank.
You weren't a fan of basketball or baseball Raph?
I mean, that was the thing. Turtles was Barbie. I don't care what anyone. Turtles was the Barbie for boys because you were getting them all dressed up and they were cool. Like I have all like those versions of different cool outfits. But I mean, when it came to Star Wars, like there's still no other line where you can go this deep. Marvel Legends, yes, but there's no vehicles or play sets. But you know, a character you would see for 5 seconds, you were getting a figure of, which unheard of because not every kid wants that character, but the collectors do, which
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah.
So battle tanks on my list. Next up, got some honorable mentions, and I'm gonna go back to a comment that I starred. Michael, you mentioned one of my personal favorites as a kid, which I still love to this day, is Dash Rendar's Outrider for Shadows of the Empire. So I said we'd come back to this. You put this on your honorable mention list.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. That, my brother had this when he was younger. And for me, I had it on my honorable mentions list because it was something that I wanted more of. I wanted that. It was like, because the design is really cool. That it's a cross between a B-wing and a Millennium Falcon. But yet, the toy of it, you only fit one figure in there. And, and I played the Shadows of the Empire game. Don't remember too fondly. I read the book back when it came out. But it was always something that I was like, God, like, because especially with Black Series, they had finally, I think it was last year, came out with Prince Shizor and Dash Rendar. And it's one of those things which I don't think that will ever happen. But I wish that they would do a vintage collection version of this thing and blow it up a bit, that let us see like what the inside maybe could have looked like. Because, like I said, I don't recall too much from the video game when you could go inside it and what it looked like and stuff. But it was just, especially at that time, you had no Star Wars really going at the time except for that. And then the Zahn books. And then the fact that, one, you got a soundtrack for the book. And then you get a couple figures, that at that time, it really whet my appetite for, man, will we ever get more Star Wars? And I remember, like I said, my collecting's always kind of come in spurts, especially, it's like my love of Star Wars has kind of come in spurts. That, I had a friend growing up that we were tied together because of Star Wars. And I believe we were in like the 7th or 8th grade. And like I said, at that point, I'd given up on Star Wars. There was never going to be any more movies. I'm into sports. I'm into girls. I'm into other things and stuff. And we're in gym class. And we're in the locker rooms changing. And I remember I come to him, I was like, hey, dude, can you got a pen I can borrow for my next class? He's like, yeah, go in my locker, grab my bag and grab a pen. So I go in his bag and in there I pull out, it's the Heir to the Empire book. Oh. And I look at him, I'm like, dude, like, you still into this stuff? And he's like, yeah. He's like, because they about to come out with some new movies based on this and a couple other books that they, come out with. And it was like, whoa. And, at that time, there was no internet. So I'm like sitting there, I'm like, oh, like, hey, my buddy said they're coming out with some new Star Wars movies. And then shortly enough, maybe a few months later, they make the announcement, George Lucas is coming back to Star Wars. And it's like, oh, he was right. Nope, but he's coming back with 1, 2, and 3. It's like, oh, we're getting new Star Wars. So, okay, that, all right. But this is one that's like, I know they had it in an episode of Rebels. But yeah, like I said, it's just a cool looking design that I wish that they would redo and make it a little bit bigger and add some stuff to it to get, expand it.
Yeah, and like I said, my local toy store, they have tons of vintage Star Wars. And by vintage, I mean 90s stuff now, which is vintage, I guess. But they're all the Shadow of the Empire stuff is there, and I'm like, should I grab it? I think I should. This kind of makes me want to grab it. You got some other ones on here. Go to the bottom left. I'm not familiar with. If you want to talk about that one first.
Yeah, so that one I put that on because that's and I'm surprised that you're not familiar that worked at Disney. That's the Star Tours.
No, not I don't know what your bottom left is. That one.
Oh.
Let's talk about that one last.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
The one next to it.
I'm not good with left and rights. So the turbo tank. So that that's one of those ones that when we talked earlier that I mentioned that a lot of my honorable mentions were stuff that I wish I'd gotten. And I had seen this, and that thing looked like it rivaled that Walker that I have. Especially, because that's in one of I remember it's in the beginning of Rogue One where they break out Jyn Erso. And it's in a scene in Revenge of the Sith during the Order 66 montage. And and I think, if I remember correctly, because I think there was another one I put on there, the ATTE, where I believe like both of those as, that could be one of those ones that you look at, is it a vehicle or is it a play set?
Yeah.
Because you open them up and it's just so much going on there.
Then you got the ATST, which I feel like I never had that on my collection, but I need one.
So I do have one of those, but unfortunately, like one of the legs has gone like limp, and so I can't stand it up anymore because that used to be in my my indoor diorama piece. I've got the indoor village and used to have that thing hulking over it, and now it lays down underneath that walker, because there is one of those in that scene that in the background comes walking out and stuff. So I just have it like, oh, okay, it was destroyed, so it's going to be under my walker.
That's cool. At least it could be like battle damage or something. Then,
yeah.
You have the Razor Crest on here. I love, again, the Razor Crest is, for me, it's just like you never made a proper retail version of it.
Yeah.
So like and like how you're not going to get kids into Star Wars if they can't get a piece of the story in their hands. And that's how I felt about the HasLab's beautiful, not taking away anything from the HasLab, but that was just my feelings on it.
Yeah, because I had a buddy years back, because I got a buddy who we worked together, but he wound up leaving to go open up his own business where he does like sports collectibles. And he one day called me that his brother had a bunch of stuff he was trying to get rid of. And he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I got some stuff for you want to take a look at. And he didn't have anything that was like, oh, I already had or just appealed to me. And he'd asked me, he's like, hey, dude, is there money in these things? and I was like, be honest with you, dude, this ain't like back in the day when we were kids, and that stuff now could be worth worth some money. I was like, because nowadays kids aren't in the toy aisles, it's guys like me that it's all centered around nostalgia. I was like, so it's like we're buying this stuff because it reminds us of when we were kids and stuff. And like kids nowadays, they got tablets and cell phones and stuff. And if I was a kid these days, I probably wouldn't be playing with toys. And I was like, yeah, there's nothing into an investment and stuff that like back in the day.
Yeah. The HasLab looks great, but again, I think they do need to find a way to to your point though, like, are the kids going to buy it? Maybe not. But I think a lot of collectors that don't want to spend HasLab money on it. Yeah. And we do have some love for the Star Speeder.
Yeah.
So when you put this on the list, I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, because that was one of those ones that was like, I know they just released it as a toy a couple years ago, but it was always so. When I've been to Disney, a few times, and it was always, I have to go on Star Tours. There's times that I'll maybe be on YouTube, and I was like, let pop on that video of Star Tours, and
You can watch the whole video.
Yeah,
That's cool.
and but this is one of those ones that more so from a toy standpoint that I wanted. Like I'd be fine. I'll be fine if I never get this as a toy in my collection. But it was always one of those ones that was like, why couldn't we ever have this as a cameo in a background scene in a movie?
I feel like it's due.
That's like, yeah, like like why couldn't this been like in the background, like like something like in what's it, Revenge of the Sith, when they're landing back on Naboo and there's there's a shot of what's supposed to be the Millennium Falcon flying off.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't this ship been in there flying off or docking or something?
Well, I saw it was on your list, and I actually have my original one from the parks. So this is when we were backstage before the show. I said, "Hold on, I gotta grab something." I went and grabbed it. So now what's cool? What stinks is that this did not match your other vehicles. So but it could be like a background vehicle.
Yeah.
The lid came off, so you can see the seats.
Oh,
Rex 1's in there. Do you know who the original voice of Rex 1 is?
I don't.
It's Pee Wee Herman.
I was thinking that. I was like, was it Pee Wee Herman? I'm not sure. But,
I do have to put batteries in it, but like if you press R2, it's supposed to make some noises. If you press these buttons on the back, it's supposed to make some noises. But this other button opens the doors.
Oh wow.
So I bought this at the gift shop. It was not to scale. I think the one that came out a few years ago was, and I was tempted, but my only sad thing is that I broke Rex's arms. But you can see how small he is. I do have a Rex figure from that was exclusively sold at the store. They had 3 figures or 4 figures that were exclusive to the attraction that you can only get there, and those do fit in with your regular Star Wars. So really happy that you put that on there. I needed the Comic-Con exclusive that has the working screen, the OG. Yeah, that's one I do regret not buying. So true, the toy aisle isn't in Target, is the legacy brands from when we were kids. It is. You had one more honorable mention. I forgot to put it on your slide, but also I had no room, so I put it on my slide. And I love this vehicle, so this is both of our honorable mentions, and you have yours out.
So this one, why it's honorable mention for me is, and you can see it's got some yellowing onto it.
Yeah, mine's yellow too. So not just mine, I guess. That's good.
One of the reasons why I put it on honorable mention was that
Video game?
I always felt I was gypped. I always felt we were gypped by this from what was in the movie. Because let's see if I remember how this thing goes.
It like turns into a weird other ship.
Yeah, so it's got these buttons here.
If I had mine on me, I can show you how to like do it.
Yeah, like it's so long, so mess with this thing. But yeah, it was so you got these little pieces here that come out. Gosh, I'm probably gonna break this thing on screen here. But it would come out and would make it look like the TIE Interceptor. But then, goodness gracious, where is it?
It never looked cool when it was all detached.
So yeah, you got it like that.
Yeah.
And then you got these other pieces that would come off. And I remember thinking when I bought this back in the day that, oh, that's going to be a story point to where, like, I don't know, maybe these things come off and it makes it fly faster, or it's got a buttload of weapons that are underneath you couldn't see, and then it's going to do some stuff. And so I always, felt like, man, we were gypped that, that stuff didn't happen in the movie.
Yeah. Just had to give a little more action value to the kids, I guess. I do like that one. It was like, I always called it the Dorito. So segueing into my honorable mentions, I just have a few here. I share your sentiments with the Starfighter. The 2 vehicles of the Coruscant chase were just made so well. These aren't my favorite vehicles, but the toys were fantastic. They had battle damage. They had rubberized parts. So like when when you would crash them, they would like crush in, which I always thought was super cool.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then
I didn't have those.
they were fun. But my Jedi Starfighter is yellowing. It kind of sucks. The T-16 Skyhopper as a vehicle, never on screen, but we always heard, I had a Luke that came with like the remote control version, which I thought was fun. But the fact that they turned this into an actual vehicle for your figures was cool. So a little off-screen nod to something that you never saw.
So they did, and
Did they?
twice actually. In the original Star Wars, when he first gets C-3PO and R2-D2 and he's cleaning them up,
Oh, so
and
you
he's
do
sitting
see it,
down and he's playing with the little thing, and it's that
but you never see it as like a vehicle.
as a vehicle. Yeah. So actually, I think they did in the special editions when they added in all the stuff in like Return of Jedi. And when they come to like Tatooine as they're celebrating, and I want to say it's that ship that flies overhead in the special editions.
All right, I'll have to double check that. But that's pretty cool. But I always thought it was like an off-screen thing, but it kind of looks like an Imperial.
Yeah,
Like,
it does. Yeah, yeah.
But I still have the Luke, and I still have that accessory that came with him, and had like a little propeller at the bottom, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
So these are my honorable mentions. So we're moving on to number one. When you're done talking about your number one, you said you think you know what my number one is.
So I thought I did, but I was wrong.
You sure?
Yeah, because I thought your number one was the Naboo, the ship, the without ship. I thought that was going to be your number one.
No, I count that as a playset. But all right, here's another. Okay, we've aligned on 3 so far.
So this one, like I said, when you gave me the topic, so this is the story of that Christmas. My parents bring out that big box.
So that's original vintage Kenner.
This is the original one,
and it's still nice and white.
So when, as a kid, like I said, you're a kid, you don't really think of things and you just whatever. So this was kind of what I think this was the gateway into my wife in Star Wars, where she would appease me by going to the movies and whatever, and let me talk her ear about it and stuff. That as a kid, I watched Star Wars, and the picture you have up here, that's the version my brother had when he was a kid. Because that one they came out with, it lit up and had like 2 little guns that lit up and made sounds. Whereas this one, I think it's still got batteries in it. Where's it at? Maybe. Well, batteries, but I don't think it works now. But this one, yeah, not making sound. But it just you press the button, it just and I remember I told my wife, I was like, when I was a kid, and so no reason why I had to have this as my number one. I've got 3 versions of this thing. That this is my original, and I told my wife that when I was a kid, in the first movie, all you saw was the cockpit, the little area where Luke is, with the lightsaber, and then when they're hiding, and then the gun turrets. But then you go into Empire Strikes Back, and things start opening up. You see now it's got a second gun that comes from the bottom. A spot where Han Solo makes his move on Princess Leia and stuff. A top hatch that is not on here. So as a kid, it was always, man. And then you see like 4 people are in the cockpit. Whereas this one, you only get 2 people in the cockpit. And so I was like, as a kid, I'm like, man, I wish my Millennium Falcon had all that stuff. And I'll never forget one day, like I said, me and friends battling G.I. Joe versus Transformers versus He-Man versus Star Wars and whatnot. And talking with kids, I'm like, man, in the movie, Han Solo walks through and this and that, and I can't do that with mine. And so the inside of it, matter of fact, I don't know if you can see it that well. You got all this design in here. So one night, me and friends are playing, and one of the friends talks me into, what if we rip all this out?
Oh God.
And so we did. And now I got a little walkway for Han Solo to walk through to the cockpit. And so then, time goes on and moving and stuff, pieces get lost and everything. So when me and my wife first started dating, so I've got 3 versions of this. I've got another version that came out in, I think, 2005, where, and I've often said I hate that version because it's an updated version of this, but it's a downgraded version in that the cockpit now only holds 1 figure in it. And it's just a lot of stuff with it, and I still have it in the original box, and I've often said I hate that version. And when, like I said, I went through spurts of my collecting, and I'll never forget, I had just gotten out of the Army, and I'm back home, and I'm driving around town, and I'm like, hey, let me go into Toys R Us and just look at stuff. And so I go in there and I'm looking at stuff, and I'm like, because at the time, some of the stuff they were coming out with, I was like, this looks horrendous. I'm done with collecting. And so I walk through the aisles, and then all of a sudden I see this big old box with the Millennium Falcon on it. And I'm looking at the thing. I'm like, interesting. Then I look at the price. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And then I flip the box around and look at it, and I'm just like, so wait, you can fit up to 4 figures in the cockpit?
That's cool.
Oh, wait, it's got top and bottom guns? Ooh, it's got a blown up area of where Luke is training and stuff. Oh, and it's got an escape pod. Yeah, I think I'll go ahead and take this behemoth.
And which version of that was it?
That is that I don't want to, not this. I don't think it was the Saga collection, but I know it goes by the BMF. And I've got that. I grabbed that thing, but I've got so much stuff going on around that thing. And if you thought like I had to carry that walker with 2 hands, I'm like, yeah, that thing I got to carry with 2 hands as well. And and I remember, like I said, when me and my wife started dating, I don't think I had any of my stuff really out and about except for that Behemoth Millennium Falcon. And she asked me about it, and I was telling her, I was like, yo, this is the version I wish I had when I was a kid. And
massive.
And then I was like, I still have my original version. And she had asked me, she was like, well, have you ever thought about trying to, rebuild that thing? I was like, no. And she was like, do you know what you need to rebuild it? I was like, yeah. And then she turned me on to eBay. And so I went and I found a whole bunch of stuff to repair that thing. And I've given up on it for some time, but I need to go back because the door I bought for it, it won't stick properly. And there's little like sticks to hold it in place as well that I never got. So I need to do that. And then I told her, I was like, I'm like, I don't know what I could do about, the age of it because it's yellowed up. And she told me, she's like, well, I'm pretty sure you could probably find something. And then I went on YouTube and found videos on how to clean that thing and take some of the age out of it. And I told her, and I don't think you can really see it here. I got a couple guys in there right now. Let me pull C3PO all the way. So I told her, I was like, one thing I got to make sure I keep intact with this thing is, I was like, I have an old sticker of Mr. T from the Mr. T cartoon back in the day. And I was like, I gotta make sure that if I clean this thing, that I don't do anything to damage that sticker. And so right there, that Mr. T sticker.
That's awesome.
And so, but yeah, I mean, like I said, this is when you say vehicles in Star Wars, I mean, this is the quintessential figure or of vehicle that comes to mind. And just, because I mean, you think back to it, is like, the first time seeing it go into light speed. And that was one of the things that, drew me to the Imperial shuttle as well. That was only the second vehicle at the time that you saw go on to light speed. And, just everything that went with it, that was like, it was an extension of Han Solo, who's, one of my favorite character, I would say. That Han Solo was just the coolest character out there. And then, he's got this thing that, you fast forward to Spaceballs, and they're parodying it as a fine Winnebago.
Yeah.
And, and just, just the history with this thing, and just, for myself, and just with the franchise itself, that I looked at when, like I said, when you gave me this topic, I was like, oh, number one, Millennium Falcon. I know there's other ones I could probably put it, but that's just that's right there. It's, you could pick it out for someone that never seen Star Wars, but like, I think that thing from like that Star Wars movie.
Yeah, I think it is from the Legacy Collection. I'm looking at it now, 2.5 feet long.
Yeah, I think that's Legacy Collection. Yeah.
Came with a Chewbacca and a Han, and
yep.
And there's a picture I'm looking at that you could put like Leia and Luke right behind them. So that's pretty awesome. That's cool.
Yeah, and then like I said, like the one of the things that caught me out, and then we talked about, I couldn't find anything from the sequels to put up here, but when I went to see Last Jedi when it came out, and there's a scene when Rey goes to confront Kylo Ren, and she leaves out the Millennium Falcon, and I jumped out of my seat where she comes out of a escape pod, because I was like, whoa, I just thought that was a thing that they made for that toy. And now you put it in the movie, oh my gosh. And I remember my buddy that was with me, he was like, what's with you? I was like, they got the escape pod. And he's like, okay. I'm like, okay, well, the toy I got, it's got the escape pod, and
And the Force Awakens Millennium Falcon left a lot to be desired, unfortunately. But
yeah, I was never a fan of the square radar. And then then the other thing about the Falcon that I won't say it turned me away, but it just raised questions for me, is that why was it that everyone was so gung-ho about using the bottom gun instead of the top, or the top and bottom?
Mm-hmm. And it didn't last long, but
yeah,
it was a great one. The only reason it didn't make lower on my top 10 is just because I never had it, so maybe a little sour grapes on my end. But cool. I love the personal story you have with this. This is awesome. My number one is another one that you had, which is the gunship. Okay. Going back, I think this one is not the quintessential Star Wars vehicle. I think that is the Millennium Falcon, but this one just had so much play value. I've done a lot of discussions on the Geonosis Battle Arena being one of my favorite battles. Probably Hoth, then Geonosis, but we never got a massive, great Hoth playset. So this, to me, this just added to the story. And we already kind of mentioned a bunch of things about this, but I love the gunship. I love that everyone has kind of a million versions that they can get if they want in their collection. If you do want to spend the money on the HasLab, you can. But the first edition will always be my favorite. Now that I see that you have those bubble gunners on yours, I'm gonna need you, whenever you find out what those are, to send them to me, because I'm gonna need to pick up 2 of those. So if you find out what collections those are from. So all right, we are at the end of our list. So I think this was your first time on YouTube. Did you have fun?
Yeah, this was great. That I know we talked about that. I've wanted to try to dip my hand into maybe toy reviews. I talked with a guy at work who he's done a lot of movie reviews on like Instagram, and he's given me some ideas of what to do. And I've been in the midst of like trying to redo my room somewhat, because he gave me an idea. He's like, yeah, he's like, probably what maybe you want to do is like as the first videos, maybe show off your collection.
I think
And
that's a great way to start off the videos. I think it's just you could do like a full one thing I found that would be really helpful. It's like if you do a full tour review, which might be like an hour long. I mean, a full room tour that might be like an hour long, right? Just to kind of get some viewers and eyes on it, and then if your collection is segmented out, break it out into sections. All right, hey, this is a shorter version of the longer video. Let's do we're gonna focus on Star Wars today, or this one is my, just get those first few videos out. And then but I watch a lot of like YouTube videos, as in like videos on how to do YouTube. I don't think I've cracked the code yet, but most the first thing is just get a video out there, and the second is find your niche and like just stick to that niche, whatever it is. And my problem when I started, like I was doing retrospectives, I was doing tour reviews, I was doing dioramas, and it was just too much. Like if not, so if the passion is just toys and talking about them and the history of them, then start with that. But the room tour is a great way to start with that, because that does tie into like the history of what it is, and then like what makes you different than information you can find on Wikipedia. And to me, like that's the personal stories that you're going to add to it. So like a lot of the stuff you talked about today, like you put that in your video, and like even if you just wanted to focus on the video of the Millennium Falcon, and then you tell that story, like that's a video right there.
Yeah, because I told my wife, I was like, because she came in one day and she just sat here and just looked around. She's like, you got a lot of stuff. Yeah, and I was like, I know. And that kind of drove me. That was like, because early on, as I said, I've been in spurts, and she was the one that got me on the Instagram, because at one time I wanted to try my hand on YouTube as far as like movie reviews, but I was struggling to, it was like finding like, okay, what would make me different from everyone else?
Yeah.
And then, kind of got into, I took a pause on that one. And then when she talked about all the stuff, I was like, I do a lot of watching toy review videos and, or toy collection videos, because, I've, shout out to like, people like Baraka the Collector. There's I've watched a lot of his videos where he does a lot of different poses with his stuff that I've tried to incorporate into my stuff.
And I like how his display is too. Like everything, it's not just upright on the shelf. Everything's like posed at you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think I wrote him once that I was like, yeah, dude, this stuff's amazing. And just guys like him, and I've watched like like Foosh and D Amazing and Mad Hatter reviews and stuff. Your videos that I was like, just in our conversation tonight, that I told her, I was like, there's a lot of stuff that there's a story behind it. There's a story behind it. And like I told her, because she asked me one day, she's like, do you ever, and it was a long time back, she's like, do you ever see yourself maybe one day selling this stuff? And I was like, not necessarily, not unless I have to.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, and if I did, there are some things here that I would just say, no, off limits. I will never sell those. And I told her, I was like, things like my original Millennium Falcon, because that's from my childhood. The big version of the Millennium Falcon, I would never part with, because that was the version I wanted as a kid. And then I told her, I was like, the Imperial Shuttle, because that was one of the first birthday presents she ever bought me when we got married. And so I was like, that's sentimental value right there. And just, I look at my stuff behind me, and, just a lot of like stories I could tell from that, of like, why I have it set up in certain ways, why I have this character. Cause like just the other day, you can't really see it too much, but like my top shelf right here, it's Black Series figures. Yeah, right up here. It's Black Series figures, but it's broken down that one section, and the light popped on. Um, but one section it's Rebels and the Ahsoka series combined in one. Then my middle section it's the Bad Batch and random stormtroopers, and then on the I guess the left side of it it's Rogue One. And in that Rogue One section, I've got Grand Moff Tarkin at the top of it. And in the front of it, I had Vader on it as well. Because I was like, I've got so many different Vaders, got to kind of spread them around and stuff. And so I recently was going through and I took the Vader from there. And because I redid some of my, below it is original and prequel trilogy figures, Black Series figures. So then I moved Vader down to, this level here. And then even when, redoing a lot of this stuff and, because like my brother, he collects some things and he's told me, he's like, I can't do too much because I've got limited space and stuff. And I told him, I was like, well, yeah, I got bigger space, but I ran out of space. But then I started to make some changes and it kind of ties back to Baraka the Collector, where he has his stuff on shelves. So I had gone out to Home Depot and bought me a bunch of these floating shelves that I put up on the top part of my walls. And so I got figures up there along the ceiling line. And so like a majority of that is inhabited by the sequel trilogy Black Series figures and some random stormtroopers, the Obi-Wan series figures, and Solo figures. And I figured, because when I went to do that, I was like, what figures should I move from here over to there? And, I started out early on doing the toy photography thing and hit my wall. And I looked at it, I was like, if I ever get back into that, what figures do I think I just may not use in toy photography again? And it was like, oh, you don't see too many people doing toy photography of like the sequel trilogy Black Series figures.
No.
So let me put those up there, and they're kind of out of the way.
I thought I've even gone as far, I don't know if other collectors have done this, but I've gone as far as like thinking, should I remove the door where there's dead wall space and like put like one of those bead curtains up, and now I have more room for shelves. So we do all crazy stuff. But hey, we're gonna wrap this one up. Rodney, thank you for joining today. I appreciate it. We'll chat more, especially if you're thinking about getting your channel going. I think you should. But everyone that stuck around in the chat, thank you. Thank you all for being active. Rodney, stick around. We hang out a few minutes after. And then hope everyone has a good rest of the week. I hope you join us next Tuesday. Check out Rodney on Instagram, which is Rodney Dent. Is that the full Instagram?
Rodney Dent 36.
Rodney Dent 36. I'll put it in the chat. Rodney Dent 36. All right, everybody. Hope you all have a good rest of the week. Hope work doesn't get you down. And until next week, we'll catch you next time. Bye, everybody.